Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So, we are back. We're nearly at the finish line now. We are going through Nicole Alexander's deposition. This is video part 8 because this is such a long document. Before I kind of go into it, though, I do want to just start off. I think it's been a bit of, some people have been a bit confused. I've been quite critical of this deposition, of the expert's performance in this deposition. So I'm coming at it from a legal perspective. The UK does not routinely have depositions, but I have seen them. I know how they kind of work and what the objective is. And so I'm not saying that this expert is not an expert in her field. Her CV suggests that she is. The jobs that she has, the roles that she's held suggest that she is. However, and I take account of, there are underlying factors potentially, such as, she may still have been feeling a bit unwell. Technically, she waived her right to, say that she is performing badly because of illness at the start when she was asked, "Are you better? Are you fitting well enough to be here?" And she said, yes. So, but there may be an element of that. Now, this is a formal deposition for a legal proceeding. You do not just power on through it. If you are not fit enough, you say so. Or if you become unwell during the process, you say so. And then you kind of arrange to reschedule it for a later date. The judge would grant those kind of extensions because it's out of the hands of either Blake Lively or Wayfarer or their counsels. So there are extenuating circumstances that an extension would be granted. Absolutely. So I don't think that's what's going on here. These depositions, they are meant for the counsel, in this case, Blake Lively, the opposition counsel, to basically pull apart your report and your expertise. That's their job. Meryl Gabensky is doing exactly what she's meant to do. So they're supposed to pull apart your knowledge and your experience, how you compiled your report, what tools you used, your methodology. They're supposed to do that. They are testing your knowledge and your experience and your skills. And my criticism for this expert purely comes from that angle, that vantage point where she is being asked questions about her report, a report that she compiled, her data, her sources that she has cited, tools like this, BART system that, by her own testimony, she says she didn't just use for this report. She actually uses it on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, no less, as part of her job in academia. But yet she didn't understand what the acronym stood for. And I have a lot of criticism for that. Not for her, that, I'm not saying that she's not an expert in her field. She, probably is. But this is where she gets to showcase her skills and her knowledge and her experience, and I am not seeing it. I have problems with it. Mistakes in her report. As I've said in previous videos, at best, that suggests sloppiness and carelessness, which is not a good look. But at worst, it is showing incompetence. And, from personal experience, right, because I've had this, right, there was, I'm sure many people will be aware of this, but for those who aren't, there was a LinkedIn account that was going around, had my name on it, had a picture of me on it, had a lot of my credentials, actually, a lot of what is actually in my real CV. Some of it wasn't quite right, some of it was. Also had things like, I've been working in the medical field for the last, X amount of years as my current / latest job. I've never worked in the medical field or in a hospital or care environment in my life. So that is not true. However, one thing it didn't have on there was, my legal executive qualifications and my study. And that is my qualification, which I attained to become a lawyer. It had my law degree. I think it had my master's on there. Now, the background info was, initially I didn't know where the hell this came from. Like, I had no idea where this come from. And suddenly pro-livelies were bouncing it around. So I thought, well, maybe have they knocked something together? Have they found a photo of me somewhere on social media and put it all together? I had no idea. So we've done a bit of digging, and actually it turned out it was my ex-husband, my abusive ex-husband, who set up a lot of accounts in all kinds of things, such as dating sites and porn sites and social media sites and all kinds of stuff. And I have no idea why, right? Because the abuse it ended up being interrupted by the death of my grandmother. And at that point, he moved out whilst I was at my grandmother's funeral. I've never spoken to him since. So, but it is part of the abuse that he set up accounts in my name. So when we eventually got there, we found out where it came from. But for months, I was being kind of like, I had this onslaught of people just piling on me and tearing me apart, saying, oh, well, this LinkedIn account says you're not a lawyer. When I was subpoenaed, I had to put a 30-page legal filing in a lawsuit that was kind of had a global platform. And I showcased my skills. So, then I had people saying, oh, actually, yeah, she knows what she's talking about. I have, I'm not a US attorney. I've always said I know my limitations, but, I'm able to interpret the law because you have a foundation skill. Like Brian Friedman. Brian Friedman is admitted to the California bar, but he is practicing and trying a lawsuit in a New York court. Why? Because he can. Because he's transferring his skills. He also has enlisted New York lawyers, that'd be Fritz, to kind of support, but he is competent to run this case in New York. He's obviously admitted pro hac vice, but his knowledge of the law is a transferable skill. So he's not precluded. And actually, as someone with my qualifications in the UK law, at the time we were actually part of the EU. So, I'm not limited to just the EU. And it's the same, that's how that transfer skill works. But where most people normally lie on their CV, and I'm not suggesting Nicole Alexander has, where they normally lie on their CV, and then when job interviews or, like this deposition effectively is similar to a job interview, I guess, in that it's testing. What do you know about it? Explain. Give me an example. And she is struggling. And that's a similar way to if you lie on your CV and then, you go for a job interview and your ability to explain how you would do XYZ, why you would do it, what would you do if that didn't work, that kind of showcases that you actually know what you're talking about and, backs up what is on your CV. And this is like a reverse of that. So like where people were like, oh, no, your LinkedIn says you're not a lawyer, but actually not only my legal filing, multiple legal filings, including Ashley's, and I had to learn Canadian law in real time for that. And the way I speak about this case, I've had the American attorneys who are covering this case, sort of back up what I've said, my opinions, my thoughts, through their own assessment. Some of them, like Omar, have outright said, yes, this is a good thought process. Leanne knows what she's talking about. So I'm kind of confident in myself, but it's an example. I'm saying this because it's a personal example. It's an example of kind of the roles being reversed in that, you know, because someone's CV looks like this, and this, does not automatically transfer to they know what they're talking about. And I'm not saying Nicole Alexander does not know what she's talking about, but I'm saying it's not coming through in this deposition. And that is a problem because of the purpose of the deposition. It is a problem. If an expert cannot explain their own thought processes, their own analysis, how they reached certain conclusions, why they cited certain sources, what certain acronyms mean for tools that they use routinely, even outside of this kind of, this expert role, then it is a problem. And if anyone, I'm not going to sit and say, oh, no, she's doing great. No, Meryl's a problem. I'm not going to sit and say, no, she's great. She's probably just feeling intimidated. I've no doubt there is an element of she feels a bit deer in headlights, a bit intimidated by the environment. It's meant to be slightly, it's not supposed to be warm and welcoming. It is supposed to put people on the spot and test them in uncomfortable situations. She should still be able to handle it, though. So if people think that this deposition is going well for Nicole Alexander, I don't know what to say. It's not. It's really not. It's troubling. And I have to be kind of honest about that, because that's what I said I would do. I am very much team Wayfarer because of, the fact that I've read everything and I have formed an opinion. But where things are not going right, it's like Brian Friedman, when he kind of interjected in this and was rude to Meryl, that is totally unprofessional. It was. He was right to be admonished. I said the same about Ezra Hudson. Okay, she wasn't admonished, I know, and that pisses me off. It does. But, also Wayfarer never asked for that. The judge could have done that. So sponte. I said that in my video. The judge could have, given that the transcript was there, he could have done something, said something, but he chose not to. But also Wayfarer did not ask for it. But do I think that Ezra Hudson or Mike Gottlieb or any of the Lively Council have they done things that are shitty? Of course they have. So it's nothing personal. But in that moment, Brian Friedman was not there to talk. And not only did he talk when he shouldn't have, he was rude when he shouldn't have been. And it was unprofessional. And it's okay to say that. And I've had, quite a few people saying, well, it's about time. Yeah, I agree with you. But actually, in a deposition, that's not the time. You still have to do things properly. It is not a tit for tat situation. So, where Wayfarer are either making mistakes or getting it wrong or doing things that I think, oh, that's not good, that doesn't look good, or where they've got an expert, I think, oh, this is a car crash like this one, I will say that. So that's my starting point. I'm sure she is very, very good in her field, but when she's been asked about it, her answers or lack of are problematic. And I think it's incredibly hard for someone to try and sit and say, no, she's doing great. She's not. Tell me how she's doing great. Tell me how she's doing great. Because she's not actually giving answers. I mean, I sat through that deposition. I thought, oh, great, we're going to find out what BERT stands for. We didn't. I didn't hear about that. I didn't find out that from the expert. I found out about it from the people who kindly left comments to explain it to me. That's not how I should be finding out, though. The whole point of these depositions, the whole point of her being an expert, is that we should be learning this information from her. That is what the jury need to do. So Wayfarer have got another expert, I think is James Haggerty. By contrast, if you compare the two, and I appreciate we don't have Nicole Alexander's report, and again, I may be blown away by the report, but I'm not blown away by this testimony about that report. But James Haggerty's report was absolutely incredible. So, Wayfarer have still got that expert there. And I appreciate we haven't actually seen Haggerty's deposition. That could have been just as much of a shit show. But I don't know. I can only talk about what is right in front of me. I'm not going to sort of speculate on things I haven't read and I haven't seen. I have read James Haggerty's report and I loved it. I have read Nicole Alexander's deposition and I'm embarrassed. That's all I can say. So we are really close. So I'm gonna, I think, 2 videos. So we'll have one more video around the 45-50 minutes, possibly a bit longer because I had that little tangent just now. But then tomorrow, then the next video, the part 9, will be considerably shorter, but I will still split them up. Okay, so yesterday we left off with this question. Sure, your opinion based on the Reddit dataset of what occurred after the August spike was based on 25 points. So Nicole Alexander answers, a piece of the analysis was based on 25 posts that month during that on Reddit. Well, I'm talking about just Reddit. So there were other posts other than the 25 mentioned here that you considered with respect to Reddit. No, I would have to go into the dataset, but it would be the amount in the file. Okay, so under results, it says, and then she reads, spike is real and statistically significant, which refers to the August spike, but in capital letters, and then she reads, but the timing is right when the movie came out, August 9th, when the alleged campaign started, August 2nd, so can't really say which caused it from a temporal data alone. That's an accurate statement, right? All right, just 1 second. Yes, but you would have to go on and read the results in its entirety. Okay. Well, it says, and then she reads, the fact it immediately crashed 76% in September suggests movie hype more than sustained campaign. Bots would be consistent over time. Is that what you were referring to? Yes. And then she reads, activity patterns look normal, 79.5%. Weekday posting, natural hourly curve, and doesn't have the hallmark of coordinated activity. Okay, so the results for Reddit were based on the about 60 posts for the baseline period and 100 posts for August and 25 posts for September, right? Yes. Based on the README, I would probably go in and just double check the dataset, but yes. Okay. So this README says that the alleged campaign started on August 2nd. What is that based on? I'd have to check, but I believe that it is in the discovery materials that I referenced in materials referenced. Okay. Do you have any personal knowledge about whether or when, Do you have any personal knowledge about whether the alleged digital manipulation started on August 2nd? Sorry, did you say personal knowledge? Yeah. No. Do you have any knowledge generally based on what you reviewed in this case? Maybe I don't understand what you're asking. Let me ask the question in a better way. Objection. Do you have any reason to believe that the digital campaign started on August 2nd? Fritz objects. Based on the discovery material I was given, the alleged campaign had a date associated with it, and I believe that's where I pulled the August 2nd date specifically. Okay. And what if it turned out that the digital part of the campaign started after August 2nd? Objection. That would not change my analysis. It wouldn't say if the campaign started on August 9th as opposed to August 2nd. Wouldn't removing the data between August 2nd and August 9th have an impact on your outcome? Objection. I hate to answer a question with a question, but I guess my question would be, why would we remove the data between August 2nd and August 9th? Well, if the campaign started August 9th, wouldn't the period between August 2nd and August 9th be part of the baseline? So there is a reason why I didn't include August 1st, for instance, and I wouldn't have included August 8th if the assumption was it started on the 9th. So the baseline should be a period before there is any alleged manipulation, before there is an actual launch of a movie. Whatever could aggressively increase sentiment one way or the other, which is why I chose that for the baseline. Right, so I mean, your August spike is only 1 month. So August 1st through 9th or August 2nd through 9th is a whole week, right? That's 7 days. Yes. Fritz says we'll stipulate to that. So your data about the August spike would go from 3 weeks of data or from 4 weeks of data to 3 weeks of data, right? No. Objection. The spike itself is based on just data, based on what happened in real life. So there was a spike in sentiment, in overall volume, just overall. So the spike happened irrespective of if it was a marketing campaign, despite whatever caused it. The spike still occurred. So why would the period from August 2nd to August 9th not be included in the baseline? Objection. I wouldn't include it in the baseline because I would end the baseline at a month outside of where we see an effective month. So you would want ideally several months of, I don't want to say clean, several months of undestructive data as much as you can isolate those factors. So if the campaign started August 28th, would you include all of August in the spike? So irrespective, some of these sentences beginning with so. So irrespective of the alleged campaign, irrespective of a spike occurred in August outside of causation. So I look at the baseline as the months previous to that spike in order to develop a baseline. So you don't know or can't say one way or the other whether the spike started in the first week in August or the second week of August. You just didn't look at that, right? Objection. I had daily data, but the spike in general was in August, and I think I specify in the report when the spike occurred, when we saw the data, when volume increased. I believe I gave a date in the report. Okay, and you said that in your report that you used the Reddit scraper actor, right? Yes, the API. Okay, the Reddit scraper actor does not allow users to perform searches. Are you aware of that? Objection. So in Appify, you are able to pull Reddit based on keywords. Let's pull up what will be Exhibit 17. And then Autumn says, which document, Meryl? The Reddit scraper actor. While we're here, let's go to the README where it says, sorry, Autumn, while you're pulling that up, can you scroll down to the bottom of this? Okay, it says, and then she reads, Reddit API pulls for Blake Lively. It ends with us. Justin Baldoni, top subs, pop culture chat, 265 posts. Faux moi, 189 posts. Romance books, 154. Do you see that? Yes. Are you aware that 265 plus 189 plus 154 adds up to 608? Maybe. And then she says to Fritz, Kevin, can you stipulate to that? Fritz says, not without a calculator. So, and then Meryl says, I can represent to you that they add up to 608. So I'm trying to understand, are 608 of your Reddit, of the data in the Reddit dataset from those 3 top subs? I'm not sure. The question is it from Blake Lively? It ends with us, Justin Baldoni? No. You see it says top subs, right? Yes. What are top subs? Top subs are the higher volume subs across Reddit. And subs are subreddits? Yes. That's how Reddit refers to them. Okay. So when you resisted using that term earlier and you said subcategories, do they mean the same thing? Objection. So subsections, I believe, is more of a general use of looking at groups or sections across websites. Some subreddits is very specific in someone understanding and knowing the architecture of Reddit. When you recall that we actually looked at posts from Pop subreddit called Pop Culture Chat and from moi, right? From Pop Culture Chat? Yes, I don't remember the from moi. Do you remember the Kurt Cobain one? Yes. So 608 of the Reddit posts in your dataset were from these subreddits, right? Top subs, yes. So 265 posts, 189 and 154. Okay. And then it says Reddit API pulls. You didn't list Reddit API in your data sources. Why not? So we didn't use the Reddit API pulls. We used Apify Reddit pull. Now the exhibit should be in there. Exhibit 17, the Reddit post scraper. You see it's Reddit scraper. Is this the API that you used? You can see in the bottom it's api.com. Yes, that should be the scraper. That you used? Yes, I believe so. Okay. And you can see it says, and then she reads, fastest, the most affordable and stable, doesn't need any login or authentication, scrapes data, detailed posts, comments with votes, media, links and replies from Reddit based on a provided subreddit's username specific link or the homepage with an optional limit on the number of posts retrieved. Do you see that? I do. So what subreddits did you enter here? So the subreddit is optional. What did you provide for this? I do not. Let me just double check. Well, what are you double checking? I'm looking at the exhibit you provided in the README files. In the README file where it says top subs, pop culture, chat, moi, and romance books. No, to see if we stated in the README file that there was any, so that should have been left blank. Well, then how would you search? Because as we just looked at, this scraper requires you to either enter the subreddit or the username or the specific link or the homepage. Objection. Here, we would have entered the homepage and I'm not asking what you would have done. What did you do? Objection. So for this run, we would not have filled out any of the optional. What would you have filled out? Let's go back, Autumn, please, to the scraper that Miss Alexander said she used, 17, which says that it can provide these things based on a provided subreddit username specific link or the homepage. So you have to give one of them. No, so one of the options when you go in again, they're all optional. We would have provided the keywords. Where on? Objection. Sorry, go on. We would have provided the keywords under, I believe it's under information. Okay, I actually have that. Let's go to the next Reddit scraper. Autumn. Sorry, this is on manual, so I would just look at I don't know what that means. Is a capital J and then SON. So if you like, I can refer to I'm going to say JSON file. I'm sorry if I get that wrong. I don't know. But I don't know what that means. Did you produce the JSON file? So that would have been part of assumingly the raw data or the script that Taylor used to fill this out. The script that Taylor used. Did you review the script that Taylor used? The JSON? No. I reviewed the Python and the extracts. Okay, so you don't actually know what Taylor filled out to scrape Reddit. Objection. I don't have the data readily available in front of me to reference. As you sit here today, you don't know what Miss Hunter did to scrape Reddit. Objection. I'm happy to reference it to provide an answer. Well, you don't provide an answer in your report, right? The question isn't posed in my report. But describing how you identified the content on Reddit is not described in your report other than saying that you used an Apify scraper. Objection. That's what I provided in my report, yes. So Exhibit 18 is the information tab for the same Reddit scraper. You can say it says based on a provided subreddit username specific link or the home page, and you see the specific input fields. The actor accepts the following input fields. If none are provided, it defaults to just scraping reddit.com. Yes, I see that. So you don't have to define an optional. Like I said, on the first page, they were all optional. So if you do not put a definition in, it scrapes Reddit as a whole. Okay, so your dataset scraped Reddit as a whole. I can answer that definitively if I can reference the JSON file that she used. But the JSON file, because we didn't specify any optional input in the README file, then I would say there were no optional inputs that were added. So it was just a coincidence that 608 of the items in your Reddit dataset are from those 3 specific subreddits identified in the README file. Objection. So in the README file, it's looking at showing where the greatest amount of volume came from, and again, if those are the major subreddits, then that would take up a large amount of volume, irrespective of the rest of reddit.com. Okay, well, let's look at your input. Let's mark as Exhibit 18 your Reddit input. Sorry, it was Exhibit 19, which is an Excel spreadsheet. By the way, who created the input spreadsheets? Those were done by Taylor. This assistant seems to be doing a lot of the work here. Did you review them? I looked through each of the Excels before submitting them. Okay, and so these input spreadsheets accurately reflect all of the data on which your opinions are based. Objection. As a whole, it's based on all of the data that we collected and analyzed. Yeah, so all of the 5 input files that comprise your entire dataset is what your opinions are based on, correct? That is correct. Okay, let's scroll down to row 161. I'm told that all this weird stuff on top is from the CSV file conversion to Excel. So if we go to 161, you see that this is a post from January 5th, 2024, which is consistent with the README file, explaining that the Reddit dataset started back in January, right? So this is a timestamp of January 2024, yes, via Reddit. Okay, so that is consistent with the README file, which said that the Reddit dataset collected content dating back to January 2024, right? Yes, so the input date for Reddit should have started in January 2024. That was input. Okay, and if we go to column F, you see it says pop culture chat, right? I see that. Okay, and that's one of those subreddits that we talked about. Yes, that's one of them. Okay, can you look at the content and tell me how your BERT sentiment analyzer characterized this post? I would have to. I don't want to make an assumption. I would have to go back and look at the score that was given. Okay, so we couldn't, based on this data, know how your sentiment analyzer categorized this post. Objection. Unless you reproduced it in the BERT classifier. Okay, and if you scroll down, let's just scroll down to column F a little bit. We see movies, romance books, film noir, movies, pop culture chat, romance books. So how does this column row F adequately capture the subreddits that are comprised in your Reddit dataset? This would pull from the subreddits, yes? This would attach where the post pulled from across Reddit. Okay, and we've already established that 608 of these posts in this column were from those 3 subreddits that we identified in the README file, yes? Yes, from a volume perspective, yes. And you don't really know why the scraper pulled 608 items specifically from those 3 subreddits, right? I would guess that it was because the keywords were relevant, or the content somehow was relevant based on, again, Blake Lively, It Ends With Us, and the other keywords that I specify in the report. Well, why do you have to guess? Yeah, that's a very good question. Because I didn't write the code for the scraper. So we would have to ask Miss Hunter to really understand how you identified your dataset. Objection. No, I'm not the one who wrote the API. For instance, for Reddit, because the question, I believe, was why did it pull this particular data? So that wouldn't necessarily be necessarily on the README file. That would also be on how the scraper itself is, or how the API is used across Reddit. And isn't the most logical conclusion that you typed in, or that Miss Hunter typed in, these 3 subreddits into the scraper? Objection. No, because I believe there is data outside of the subreddits. Right, but I'm talking about just the 608 within the subreddit. I'm not sure I understand. You're asking, did she input into the optional field to identify those specific subreddits? The specific subreddits that she noted in her file that add up to 608 of the posts. Isn't it possible that she just searched those Reddits using the data scraper we talked about? If she only searched those, then you wouldn't have data from any other section. Unless she did an additional search, right? For that remaining 100 plus. I don't believe that's what she did. But you don't know. Objection. I would say with confidence that is not how she utilized the scraper. But as you sit here today, you can't tell us what she did to utilize the scraper. Objection. I did not give her any direction to add in optional fields, so I do not believe that she took it on her own onus to add in subreddit classifiers into fields that were optional. But how do you explain that the API scraper that you use specifically does not contemplate entering search terms? Objection. So the subreddits, or the categories that are the largest across any social media platform, will be ones that come back most often with data, especially if the information is relevant to that particular genre, classification, subreddit. Okay, let's go to row 225 and 227. You see the post, Frances Bean Cobain pays tribute to her father, Kurt Cobain, 30 years after his death. And in column F, it's pour moi. Do you see that? Yes, I'm on that row. Okay. And that's the post we looked at earlier, right? It has the same title, yes. Okay, and the same subreddit, pour moi. Yes. Okay, how did your BERT sentiment analyzer characterize this post? Objection. So I think you asked me that question when we were looking at the actual image. So again, I would say it should have classified it as null or neutral. Okay, so how many of the posts in this dataset should have been qualified as null or neutral? I would have to go through and look at them individually to see which ones would be classified as positive sentiment, negative sentiment, null, or neutral. Okay, from this, we wouldn't be able to determine these things. On how the classifier would classify it, no, we're not able to tell based on this. Autumn, if you can move the TikTok README, and we'll mark that as Exhibit 20. Do you know, Miss Alexander, how many videos are on TikTok every month? In TikTok? I don't know offhand, no. What about every day? I don't know offhand. Ballpark? Objection. I couldn't even venture to guess. Does 34 million sound like maybe around what you would expect? Objection. I guess it would depend if that's global or US. But it doesn't sound crazy to you that there would be tens of millions of TikTok videos posted every day? No, that sounds rational. Okay, Exhibit 20 is the TikTok README file. Do you see that on your screen? Yes. Okay, and do you see it says analysis of Blake Lively TikTok videos, 688 videos total from the dataset. Is that right? Is that right? Sorry, just give me a second. August 27th, I believe that's correct. Okay, so when you look at what it calculates, you see the baseline period mean about 11 videos per month. Is that right? Is that accurate? Objection. I'd want to go into the dataset just to confirm, but that's what this reads, yes. Okay, but we talked about earlier that you would have confirmed the accuracy of the README files before you produced them to us, right? I would have gone through and read me each of the README files. So this README file says that there were 11 videos per month, which is about 33 videos from May to July 2024. Is that right? That's what this says, yes. Okay, and it says the August spike is 187 videos, right? It does. Okay, so your analysis of the August spike with respect to TikTok was based on 187 videos. That's what this says. Again, I would want to check the data. Okay, we'll do that. And then September dropped to 31, right? Based on this read my file, yes. Okay, and then the results in the README file would be based on the other data described in the README file, right? I'm not sure I understand the question. I mean, the results here are based on the number of posts it describes that we have just discussed, right? So, Fritz objects. Again, I would want to go in and just double check that the total numbers are indeed accurate, but the results should be consistent with what I have in my report. And the comment that, and then she reads, the same timing issue as to all platforms. Movie came out August 9th, alleged campaign August 2nd, can't say what caused it from timing alone. Is still your opinion? Yes, again, going back to use of the word definitive that we talked about earlier. Okay, so but they don't use the word, she doesn't use the word definitive here, right? I believe I use it in my report. Right, but it's not in the README file, right? Objection. The README file was written by Taylor Hunter. The report was written by myself. Oh, so do you not stand behind Miss Hunter's work as described in the README files? Objection. I use different verbiage based on, again, analyzing and doing the interpretation of the data. That's why I am the end publisher of the report. This is information that Taylor is feeding in based on her analysis, aggregation, and pulling of the datasets. But you didn't make any edits to her comments in the README file, right? No, I did not. And you used a TikTok hashtag crawler actor, right? I'm sorry, a hashtag crawler actor? Uh-huh. So it was the actor for the API for TikTok. I don't believe it actually calls itself a crawler. I don't remember that verbiage in the way that it's... Okay, let's look at your report to refresh your recollection. If you can put it on the screen on page 109. Okay, you see it says Apify TikTok hashtag crawler actor. Oh, God. Do you see that? So they've basically quoted back her report where it specifically does actually use the words that she says, I wouldn't use those words. Oh, so if that's the way I identified it there, then I'm assuming that is the way it is. It has named itself, yes. Well, why are you assuming if you put it in your appendix? So if that's the way it is described, then when I use it in sourcing, I use the verbiage of what it is called. Okay. And do you understand that TikTok hashtag scraper allows you to extract data from TikTok videos that used a particular hashtag? Yes. So what specific hashtags did you use? So you don't have to specify a hashtag, just to be clear. You can use keywords in that scraper as well. Okay, well, let's take a look at that scraper. Actually, before we do, the TikTok hashtag scraper is called TikTok hashtag crawler actor. Okay, let's look at Exhibit 21. And Autumn, go ahead and do Exhibit 22. What? Autumn, go ahead and do, she says Exhibit 22. I think she's supposed to mean 21 as a TikTok input. You should have Exhibit 21 in your exhibit share. We will put it up on the screen. Do you see this is Appified TikTok hashtag scraper, right? Yes, it says. And then she reads, what is TikTok hashtag scraper? It's a powerful tool that allows you to extract data from TikTok videos that use a particular hashtag. Do you see that? Yes, I'm reading it. Okay. And then if you look, it provides how to scrape TikTok with the TikTok hashtag scraper and has 5 specific points. The third of one says, add 1 or more TikTok hashtags. Do you see that? Yes, I do. So what hashtags did you use to scrape TikTok? And then I'm going to stop there and finish up the last 8 or 9 pages in part 9.